I'd like to welcome everyone. Good morning to the third meeting of the House Standing Committee on Economic Development and Workforce Investment. I want to call the meeting to order. I want to remind everyone, please silence your phones. Audience members, just a reminder, no signs, no clapping and vocal outbursts if you don't care. If you're interested in testifying, be sure that you have signed up. And as if anyone has any questions, members, be sure to let Sasha know, or Janine. Any members have guests that they would like to recognize today? Okay, seeing none, Sasha, call the roll.
Representative Baker. Here. Representative Bauman.
Present.
Representative Bratcher.
Here.
Representative Callaway.
Present.
Representative Camuel.
Present.
Representative Duval.
Here.
Representative Elliott. Representative Gentry.
Here.
Representative Jackson.
Present.
Representative King.
Present.
Representative Colcarney.
Present.
Representative Lawrence.
Present.
Representative Lockett.
Present.
Representative Pratt.
Present.
Representative Sharp.
Present.
Representative Tackett Lafferty. Representative Truitt.
Here.
Representative Huff.
Here.
Chairman Branscombe.
Here. We do have a quorum and duly constituted to do business. First on the agenda today is House Bill 255. Representative Pratt. Representative, you could state your name for the record. Make sure your green light's on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. I'm Phil Pratt, House Representative, District 62. We have a committee sub, sir.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Committee sub passes. Representative Pratt, floor is yours.
Let's talk about the committee sub because that's basically the bill. First and foremost, the House Committee sub will bring Kentucky's child labor law standards into alignment with federal law. The House Committee sub will expand opportunities for 16, 17-year-olds to gain valuable experience in the workplace, which will set them up for success in adulthood, which is the same approach that exists in federal law. You know, it's amazing as I look at this, people in part-time jobs actually in high school earn 20 to 25% more than their counterparts that do not have a part-time job. So I would say that this is actually building people for the future. And we've also looked at, as we look at workforce participation, the biggest area of dropout is youth between the ages of 17 and 25. So this hopefully will help with that. If a 16 or 17-year-old wants to work, he or she should be free to do so. To me, it's no different than a student who wants to dedicate a lot of time to a team sport or student club or volunteering in the community. As we looked at this bill also, it's amazing. If you want to play football, they do regulate football to only 5 hours a day. But now when you take in weightlifting, conditioning, watching film, it's a lot more than 5 hours. I can tell you I played high school football back in the days when we didn't have all this, but you talk to the kids now, they're spending a lot of time. It's amazing. All the other sports are absolutely unregulated. You can practice them all day, all night if you want to. And you're going to hear people say, well, you're going to hurt GPA. I actually checked with several athletic directors. If you're passing 4 out of 6 classes, you can play high school sports. That's equivalent to a .667 GPA. So it's amazing that you can play sports, but you can't work. We encourage students who want to experience the workplace and earn some money in the process do so. Now, here's what the bill does not do. First, it does not alter Kentucky's existing time of day restriction for 14 and 15-year-olds. It simply takes the time of day restriction that currently appear in administrative regulations and codifies them into statute. Second, the House Committee sub does not alter existing restrictions which say that certain jobs are too hazardous for workers under the age of 18. There's a long and extensive list of jobs you cannot do. And I will tell you, as a business owner, we have a lot of kids come to me and say, we would like to work for you, Mr. Pratt. That's fine. But if it has a motor on it, you can't touch it. So I quickly tell them, till you're 18 years of age, you're regulated to a shovel. We're talking about a weed eater. We're talking about a backpack blower they cannot use. Legally, OSHA standards say they cannot touch them. Examples are coal mining, logging, operating forklifts, power drill machines. These jobs and several more remain off limit. Third, the House Committee sub does not change the existing prohibition under Kentucky law that prohibits a person under the age of 18 from working in a business where alcoholic products are manufactured, bottled, or sold. And so with that, sir, if there's no questions, I move for passage.
I believe we do have a question here. Representative Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick question. When I was 17 years old, I worked in a lumber yard and drove a forklift and carried sheetrock up to second-story homes. Worked there all summer long, didn't make very good money. It was hard work, but I'm hoping it taught me some good lessons along the way. So my question is, in that scenario, would that be allowed under this bill?
No, sir. It's absolutely. OSHA standards will not allow you to operate a forklift. And, you know, you still have people who still, unfortunately, break that. And I will tell you, growing up on a farm, I didn't realize that any of these regulations existed. Basically, I cannot remember when I was not driving a tractor or when I was not doing something of that. Agriculture is exempt, but they were breaking OSHA law, make no doubt about it.
Is there any type of retribution if these laws are broken?
Actually, I looking at the fines earlier. I think it's $10,000 on the first one, $100,000 with jail time on the second. So yes.
And just a quick comment, Mr. Chairman. I support this 100%. I think it's a great bill. I think that when we can begin to get people working, then it's always a good thing. So thank you very much for the bill.
All we're doing, this bill does, is bring Kentucky in line with federal standards. We cannot trump federal standards. So with that, all it does is bring us in line with federal. We are more restrictive on this. So that's all it does. We're not going past federal standards. We're not asking to do anything that federal standards don't already exist. We'll just bring ourselves in line with that.
Representative Callaway. Representative Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned, you grew up on a farm. Does this impact farmers at all and their families?
No, ag is exempt.
Ag is exempt. Can I have a follow-up question?
Yes, sir.
All right. Who's against this bill?
You're going to find out here in a few seconds. I'm sure we'll have some people speak about this. And you're going to hear some questions about this. So you'll figure this out very quickly, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Camuel.
Yeah, thank you. Have you or has anyone reached out to KDE about the bill, or have they reached out to you?
This is not on KDE's purview right now, and no, ma'am, we did not.
Okay, so we don't know where they stand on the bill?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Representative King. Representative Cole Carney.
Thank you, Chairman. Has, kind of following along with Representative Camuel's question, have you reached out to the cabinet on this, and or have they reached out to you, and what is their position?
I have not reached out to cabinet, and we are the lawmakers, not the cabinet, not bureaucrats that aren't elected. So that's why, no, ma'am, I have not.
True, and I don't know if anybody from the cabinet is present, if they have any comments, but I think that is certainly an important piece of information to know where they stand.
No, as far as I know, I've received no email from the cabinet,
Okay.
or they have not reached out to me.
Thank you.
Representative Gentry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, just, I guess a general question. Do you believe in states' rights that are afforded to us by the federal Constitution in general?
Yes, I do.
Is there a reason why we're been on this multi-year trek, so to speak, to relinquish those rights as it relates to workplace safety? I mean, we've done this with workers' compensation, with OSHA. Now we're going in child labor laws. We're trying to, and what I mean by that is we're trying to set a precedent of not having restrictions that go beyond federal standards. So a lot of federal acts are produced in somewhat of a general fashion. It gives, they allow states to use their powers when needed to apply more restrictive standards in certain situations. And I'm just curious of why we're going down this path. And it seems like in every worker area. Do you have any kind of response for that?
Absolutely. This law does not have anything to do with OSHA standards. We're not asking to do away with the restrictions they have.
Well, we've already fixed that. We've already done that.
Well, we can't be more restrictive than federal. I got news for you on that. But I think there's sometimes when you look at the law and you say, why are we more restrictive in this area? It doesn't make sense. This is one of them. That the fact that if we can get someone out earning a job, and by the way, I'm sure hear about graduation rates. We took a hard look at that. I want to thank my intern, Riley McAvaney, who did, I saw his last name, did a lot of work on this. Our graduation rates are in line with all the states that actually have these same laws. So with that, I think this is good to get people out into the workplace, get them some work experience, and hopefully they'll get off the couch, quit playing Nintendo games, and actually make money. But it's amazing if you play sports, there's no restrictions. So it seems to be unfair that we don't want to train people to have a job after they get out of high school, but it's okay if you play sports 24/7.
Representative Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Representative Pratt. Thank you for presenting this bill. I don't know, I may have missed some of your remarks. I've been sitting here, but it's pretty early in the morning. Amen. What have other states around us done? Are we out of line with other states? I know you said this would bring us in line with the federal regulations, but what have other states around us done?
Well, it's not so much around us, all over the nation. Doing our research, we found there was 29 states have adopted these same standards as federal. There are red states, blue states, all over the place. So we won't be that lone outlier. Again, what we came up with was 29 states have actually adopted and gone to the federal standards.
So this would make us number 30 then out of 50 in the country.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, we have some folks signed up to speak on the bill. Mr. Gerald Atkins.
Mr. Sharp, your question getting ready to be answered.
There's another one that's going to speak with me. Is that okay if he comes up now also?
Is that Dustin?
Yes.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, good morning. And if you could, just make sure your mics are turned on. Introduce yourselves for the record, and the floor is yours.
I'm Gerald Adkins with Working Strategies 2.
And I'm Dustin Pugel with the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy.
I'm going to start this morning. Good morning, Chair Branscombe, Vice Chair Huff. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak this morning. My name is Gerald Adkins. As I said, I'm with Working Strategies 2. I'm testifying as a legislative agent for the Kentucky State AFL-CIO and the Kentucky State Building and Construction Trades Council today. I'm going to testify briefly on the changes that we see to KRS 339230 in this bill and to the Regulation 803 KAR 1:100 that could be detrimental to our young workers in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. House Bill 255 repeals KRS 339230, which lists the restrictions on employment of minors between the ages of 14 and 18. The new section created by this bill changes the following. There are no restrictions in the new bill on the number of days per week or hours per day that a 16 and 17-year-old may work during weeks when school's in session. During the summer, they can work unlimited hours. Now, we're only talking 16 and 17-year-olds, okay? In the current statute, this age group can already work 6 hours per day on a school day. So keep that in mind. School gets out 2:30, 3 o'clock. They can work up to 6 hours on a school day. Up to 30 hours a week during a week when school's in session. And with parental permission, they can work up to 6.5 hours per day on a school day and 40 hours per week with parental permission and maintaining a 2.0 GPA. So there are already these hours are not very limited currently already. Additionally, they can work up to 8 hours per day on weekends during weeks when school's in session. And remember, up to 40 hours per week. There's no restrictions on how late at night or how early in the morning a 16 or 17-year-old may work during a week when school is in session in the new bill. They're currently unable to work past 10:30 p.m. or 11 p.m. with parental permission on a night preceding a school day. They also can't work before 6:30 a.m. in the morning under the current bill, and they can work up till 1 a.m. on a night preceding a non-school day during a week school's in session. So, for example, on a Friday night, school's not in session on Saturday, they can work till 1 a.m. on a Friday night or Saturday night. The new bill does not prohibit a 16 or 17-year-old to work during hours when school's in session. House Bill 255 also requires the Commissioner of Department of Workplace Standards to repeal the regulation, as I previously mentioned, 803 KR 1:100, which is a regulation for KRS 339230. Some of this regulation is incorporated in the new language of House Bill 255, such as the hazardous occupations that an employee under the age of 18 shall be employed in. However, some key points of the current statute and regulation are missing. By repealing this statute and regulation, the Commissioner of Department of Workplace Standards will have no authority to add or delete any of the hazardous occupations that currently listed in the new bill should the United States Department of Labor make changes to these occupations. So, for example, if they come out and they find that a particular occupation is no longer considered hazardous, they've done studies and they're okay with that, Kentucky can't change that without coming to you and codifying a new bill, because it does not give any wiggle room for that. Current regulation also lists occupations that a 14 and 15-year-old employee is able to do and some that they are prohibited from doing. House Bill 255 only lists occupations that 14 and 15 employees are prohibited from doing, 14 and 15 years old employees. There are a few items listed in 29 CFR section 570.33, that's the federal code, that are listed as prohibited but are not prohibited in House Bill 255, such as operation of motor vehicles. This is 14 and 15-year-olds now, keep in mind, okay? Such as operation of motor vehicles or service as helpers on such vehicles. So in the current regulation, they cannot ride in the back of a bucket truck and perform work. As a 14 and 15-year-old, we're not talking about 16 and 17-year-olds, which this bill is trying to address. That's the majority, I think, of what Representative Pratt's trying to address. However, there's some things that are missing. I would think that all occupations prohibited for minors 14 and 15 years of age should be included in House Bill 255. I would like to wrap my testimony up today to say that I was able to speak on this bill from a personal standpoint. I worked my career at the Kentucky Labor Cabinet, the Division of Employment Standards. I was the manager of the Wage and Hour Division for the last 15 years of my career. I have significant knowledge of the impacts an overworked employee under the age of 18 while they're still in school. We are definitely not opposed to change that will better the working conditions, not only for employees, but to ensure employers are able to successfully staff their businesses. We do not think taking protections away from our young workers are the best mechanism to accomplish this goal. An educated and properly trained workforce is the way to go to sustain a workforce in the Commonwealth of Kentucky that would make our neighboring states jealous and thrive to match what Kentucky is doing. We are willing to work with Representative Pratt and the rest of the Kentucky legislature on ideas on how to accomplish this goal. We are asking you to please vote no on House Bill 255, House Committee Sub 1 today. Thank you, Chair Branscombe and Vice Chair Huff, for allowing me to speak today.
Good morning, Chairman Branscombe, Vice Chair Huff, members of the committee. Again, my name is Dustin Pugel. I'm the Policy Director at the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some of our concerns about this bill. And I want to start by saying that I got a job when I was 14 years old, and I've worked consistently every year since then. So I support the ability of teenagers and high school students to be able to work. I don't think anyone in this room questions the wisdom of allowing that to happen. The question is whether or not this bill threatens the safety of our children or threatens their ability to thrive in high school. As written, House Bill 255 eliminates the state's ability to establish its own child labor protection regulations By repealing the child labor regulation that establishes the standards for employment of minors and the current state statute that allows the Commissioner of Workplace Standards to promulgate any future protections for children in the workforce. In so doing, this would eliminate the already very generous guardrails that Gerald just mentioned on the hours and days of the week that 16 and 17-year-old kids may work. It'll weaken the hour and occupation standards for workers under 16, as Gerald described, and it'll further bind the state from enforcing any child labor provision of the Fair Labor Standards Act that's not explicitly stated in state statute. The result of hollowing out the statutes and regulations for protecting children at work would mean that for 16 and 17-year-olds, again, just to reemphasize what Gerald said, employers could require unlimited hours of work per day, even on school days, and perhaps even during hours when school is in session. Employers could have these kids work unlimited hours of work per week, even while school is in session. And under House Bill 255, kids could work very late at night and even work third shift or overnight. The bill also loosens the hours a 14 or 15-year-old can work beyond what the federal law requires, and apparently permits kids to be employed in more types of jobs currently disallowed because they are considered hazardous. Helping kids become ready for careers or for college through high school is essential to their success in life. The existing child labor standards are evidence-based, and it's hard to see how allowing additional hours and days of work will not impinge on the success of preparing for post-secondary education or vocational pathways to good jobs following high school. Already there are 19,000 Kentucky kids ages 16 to 19 who are not in school, and we are concerned that this bill could exacerbate that problem, threatening the progress Kentucky has made in graduation rates in recent decades. Research shows that teenagers who spent long hours in jobs were more likely to drop out of high school than those who worked moderate hours or did not work at all. And if you talk to any high school teacher, they will tell you that juniors and seniors are already falling behind or dropping out so that they can work more. And House Bill 255 would only open up those floodgates. In addition, we're concerned that the ways House Bill 255 eliminates child labor protections could harm children and fellow workers by increasing the likelihood of workplace injuries. Kids need more sleep, frankly, because their minds and their bodies are still growing. And young workers who are less experienced with the equipment and processes involved in any workplace are more likely to hurt themselves or their fellow workers. Allowing additional hours of work per week on top of school hours and work through the night will increase that likelihood in ways that we can't really expect right now. Finally, the bill could incentivize employers to rely more on child labor, which pays less typically than adult labor, at the expense of adult employees who rely on those wages from these jobs to make family ends meet. The result could be depressed wages and fewer job opportunities in industries like restaurants and retail that employ many thousands of Kentucky adult workers across the Commonwealth. Kentucky should have the ability to keep, promulgate, and enforce child labor protections on hours and safe occupations, and House Bill 255 largely prohibits the state from doing so. I ask that you protect the kids living in your districts and vote to preserve our ability to keep kids safe.
Thank you all. Representative Callaway, is your question for these gentlemen or for Representative Pratt? More of a statement, okay. Representative Jackson, your questions for these gentlemen or Representative Pratt? Or, okay, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not familiar with the federal guidelines, but when you say with parental permission, 6.5 hours a day, 40 hours per week, does a federal law come into play on that at all?
Federal law does not have any restrictions on 16 and 17-year-olds. That was Kentucky's law. Yes, you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Bratcher.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for your presentation. At what age do you think a child should be responsible for themselves? When they need to start doing time management, identifying when they need to study, when they need to work? At what point do we shift this to have the responsibility to be on the person?
Sure. I'm raising a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old right now, and what I've learned is that as we grow, we increase that level of responsibility. So I think we're always doing that. I don't think the question is necessarily, at what age do we give absolute freedom to a child to be able to do anything they want. The question is, what are we incentivizing by weakening the child labor standards that we have on the books? I'm less worried about a child taking responsibility for themselves and more concerned about employers pushing hours that are going to threaten their ability to succeed or potentially create problems in the workforce from a lack of sleep or an inability to cope.
Can I add one thing to that, Representative Bratcher? From my experience working at the Kentucky Labor Cabinet in the Wage and Hour Division, we used to get a first report of injury on all injuries across the Commonwealth. And part of that were minors under the age of 18. And absolutely, the injuries in employees under the age of 18 were a larger volume than other injuries in certain time frames of the evening and day. So that was part of, I think, why I wasn't around when Kentucky codified into law the restrictions on the hours, but absolutely that's why, from my experience, why it was there.
Thank you.
Representative Callaway.
Yes, just a brief comment. Sometimes looking outside of the box, a friend of mine that I'm very close to, my son's in business with, his dad left him when he was young. He had 2 other siblings, and when he was 13 years old, he literally worked through the summer, saved his money. His mom got a little bit of help from the state, and he literally raised his 2 brothers. It's not the ideal situation at all, but he did. He put himself through J.B. Speed School of Engineering, came out with an engineering degree, has been making 3 figures for years on end. I heard him make the statement the other day about that he's trying to get his boys to not have to go through what he went through, and I made the statement to him. I said, a lot of what you went through actually made you what you are today. And so I think it's not who is going to take advantage of this that's our cultural issue. It's who's not. It's the generation that we're dealing with that are later and later into the workforce and are underdeveloped. And so anything that we can do as a society that promotes this cultural growing up and taking on responsibility is something I think we definitely need to consider. And all of us are very interested in safety, and we are the governing body. So when we say that we won't have the ability to flow or comply with federal law or to change if things were to change, we have the ability as a governing body to do that. So we will assess those things as they come up. So I just kind of want to make that clear and bring up that situation that in that situation, that young man thrived as a result of it, and under the law as it was not able to do it, but he did. And so this also allows for some of those situations where young men have no choice to go out and to take care of their family, and that's exactly what he did. So,
gentlemen, thank you all for your testimony. Representative Pratt, anything further?
Can we make a motion on the bill?
I think Representative Jackson has one more question.
Yes, sir, please.
Representative Pratt, I was a high school guidance counselor for 19 years, so I work closely with these kids. I don't know. I just want to ask your intention on the 10:30 p.m. at night, 6:30 in the morning, 1 a.m. on weekends. Do you have a problem with those hours during school?
Again, to be doing that, they'd probably be more likely working in a manufacturing situation. And I think in this labor standards, it says you may not work in a factory. So again, that would be it. They can't work in a bar. So again, I do think we need to take a look at that. But again, if they wish to, I'm not sure what job would offer those hours other than manufacturing, which is prohibited already.
Well, maybe like McDonald's or some of those fast food restaurants, they probably could work till 11 or 12 o'clock during the week if they wanted to. But I guess my question, would you have a problem if those regulations were put on this for during school?
I'd have to take a look at the hours on that. I don't know. Like I said, it depends on, I need to take a hard look. And trust me, when they talk about the federal standards, we have this, I have this in front of me. It is an extensive list of jobs you cannot do anyway, the OSHA prohibits. So again, if they want, but again, if they need to, if those hours are available to them, then I think we should offer that to them, yes.
Okay, I would just ask that you take a look at that and see if that's something that you could live with, if possible. I would appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Actually, one thing I mentioned, failed to mention earlier in my testimony was Kentucky has already mirrored the federal standard for 14, 15-year-olds. We're not changing that. It's 16, 17-year-olds we're taking a look at changing. You know, they talked about, you know, if the federal changes the law. Last time I checked, we cannot trump federal law. I mean, if they pass a law, we have to follow it. That's the way the system works, whether you like it or not. So again, if they change it, we have to follow it. Last time I checked.
Representative Elliott.
He just addressed what I was going to
Address
ask
it.
him.
Okay.
And they did mention.
We have a motion on the bill and a second. Motion on House Bill 255 as amended by the committee sub. Are there any further questions? Seeing none, Sasha, call the roll.
Representative Baker? Yes. Representative Bauman?
Yes.
Representative Bratcher?
Yes.
Representative Callaway?
Yes.
Representative Camuel?
I'd like to explain my vote today.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a no on this vote for a number of reasons, or on this bill for a number of reasons. And I can say that I've worked since I was 14. I worked 2 jobs, one for my family business and one for Kroger. I was also an athlete. I was a 2-season athlete as well as a member of my high school speech and debate team. And I know exactly how hard it is to get your homework done, get in enough sleep in order to perform your best at school and to perform your best in competition, whether it's athletics or an academic style competition. And I think that this changing the restrictions on work hours, work ages, the type of work, the time of work for our kids who are still, they're not developed, they're not full adults. I think that puts them at risk of encouraging them to drop out of school or putting them at risk of losing any type of academic advantage or athletic advantage that they may have if they want to pursue something outside, pursue a college career or any furthering their education at all. The other reason that I'm a no is my kids have also worked since they were 15, and by the age of 16, all of their friends had jobs. So I'm not aware from my perspective, from my family, I don't know where there's an issue of kids needing to work, but they can't, like they can't find a job. And then lastly, I know you mentioned that athletes for high school, it sounded like you were saying they can work them 24/7, that there are no restrictions on that. My kids were 3-season athletes. They were each cross-country runners, track runners, and swimmers. And there were restrictions and there were guidelines that they had to follow. So I'm unaware of what the KHSSA standards are on that. If they have changed, I'm happy to look into it, but I'm not aware of a 24/7 rule on that. But for the record, I'm a no, but I appreciate you bringing the bill.
Representative Duval?
Yes.
Representative Elliott? Representative Gentry?
Explain my vote, please.
Yes, sir.
I'm a no today as well. And again, yes, we make laws. Yes, we make policy. It's what this body does. But the cabinet people that work in these situations every day do have the rights or do have the powers to produce administrative regulations to apply more specific type standards in certain situations that might be required necessary to carry out the laws and policies that we pass, unless we take that ability away from them. And sponsor was certainly right that we cannot do that in OSHA standards anymore and cannot make it more restrictive than federal law. And that's the reason, because we changed that. We took that ability away just a couple of years ago. So to say that this body's going to follow and recognize these situations, well, we need to change, and we can always change the law. Yes, we can, but I think precedent has been established for the 7 years that I've been here, 8 years that I've been here, that we're moving in a direction that's away from worker safety And that worries me, that concerns me in many areas. Maybe I'm biased. I'm a victim of worker safety on an incident that happened. It should have never happened. So my hair kind of raises a little bit whenever we forfeit our powers and states' rights to make more restrictive administrative regulations in certain situations that we feel like are needed. So I'm concerned about this. I know the intent is good, but I'm afraid we might create more problems by trying to solve a problem that we're not thinking this through. So I'm sorry about the long explanation, but I'm a no today. Thank you.
Representative Huff,
Yes.
Representative Jackson,
Yes.
Representative King,
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Cole Carney.
Briefly explain, Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Pratt, I appreciate you bringing this bill. I understand that, we've had discussions about workforce and workforce shortages and how do we fix it. I have several concerns about this particular piece of legislation. So for the record, I'm a no today, but I'm very concerned about the general direction of this bill. We've got especially Section 2, subsection 2, I believe it is, where we've got all these instances, including when the child has been excused from compulsory school attendance, I'm assuming by a parent, and a lot of different circumstances where they will not go back if they've been expelled, if they aren't in school for whatever reason. We're not encouraging them to go back to school. What we're instead pushing our kids to do at a younger and younger age is to go into these jobs that are inherently low-paying jobs because they don't require experience, and they're just going to get stuck there because that's where we're pushing them. We're pushing them into these career tracks that they're never going to get out of because we're encouraging them to work at these jobs instead of actually going back to school and bettering themselves. And we've heard a lot of comments today about people being able to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and work ethic and the importance of it. I don't think anybody here is going to argue against that. I'm certainly not arguing against developing work ethic in our young people. But I'm also equally concerned that for every one instance or one anecdote that we can provide about somebody that succeeded, despite the odds, in spite of the odds, despite family circumstances, we have hundreds more, potentially, kids who could be exploited. So the unintended consequences of weakening the child protection laws that we have on the books, which we should be proud that are stronger than federal law, we don't need to be weakening them. Because we understand, I think, of course, it's widely accepted that, our brains continue developing into our 20s. I don't think anybody here is gonna try to argue that 16 and 17-year-old children have the same level of judgment that we all should here. And that's why the child labor laws exist, to protect these kids. And it's not for the kids that have good family support, that have good parental support. These are for the kids that are already at risk. They're already going to be exploited. They're vulnerable, and we need to be protecting them, and we need to be protecting them as much and as strongly and as often as we can, instead of weakening and rolling back regulations in statute when kids are free to work today whenever they wish to. Why we're rolling those back to make it easier for employers and bad actors to exploit our kids. So for all of those reasons, and including, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, the fact that we don't understand where the Labor Cabinet fits into this, what KDE's position is on this, what the impact on implementing such a law would have, there's just a lot of questions and a lot of potential pitfalls in this legislation, and that's why I'm a no today.
Representative Lawrence.
Explain my vote.
Yes, sir.
Representative, thank you for this legislation. I'm a yes today, but as we were sitting here listening to the arguments, I remember last year we heard the same arguments for 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds to be able to have a life-altering surgery. And today to sit here and think that we're going to be able to put them into the workforce versus life-altering surgeries, I'm an absolute yes. Thank you.
Representative Lockett.
Explain my vote, please.
Yes, sir.
I just want to piggyback what was just said. I think it's very hypocritical to sit here and say that a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old does not have the brain development to work, a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, but yet they can decide that they want to have a surgery. It's crazy. I'm a yes.
Representative Pratt,
Yes.
Representative Sharp,
Explain my vote.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at this. I see some middle ground that can be achieved, so I would suggest that we kind of search that out, and I'm going to pass on this for right now.
Representative Tackett Lafferty, Representative Truitt,
Yes.
Chairman Branscombe.
Yes. House Bill 255, as amended by the committee sub, passes with favorable expression. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, committee members, for your votes. And by the way, again, I want to reiterate, our graduation rates in Kentucky align very closely to every state that has this same law. And I will tell you this, my sons will tell you, and they told their friends, if you think about dropping out of school and not getting a better education, go work for Dad for 8 hours, push a shovel. You will change your opinion on that. So I think after you do a hard day's work, you will think, maybe I need to stay in school. Maybe I actually need to graduate and have a successful career. Thank you all very much.
There being no further business for the committee, we are